I used over 1,000 Wonderbar Gobblegums to test out the real odds associated with the wonder weapons in Black Ops 6 Zombies across all the maps, and in this video, I'll be giving you the results. Stick around because we spawned the mystery box with Wonderbar 200 times on each map in the game, and the wonder weapon odds are scaringly shocking. But before we get into the video, drop a like and subscribe and turn on post notifications if you haven't already for everything Call of Duty Zombies. Also, massive shout out to ZoneX, as the concept for this video is his idea, and he, along with myself, Chad of Duty, Demising, and Andre, spent the last 7 hours spamming Gobblegums and spinning the mystery box to be able to calculate the odds associated with each wonder weapon on each map. Also, huge shout out to my boy Donuts for setting us up with an extremely simple spreadsheet to track this data. A link to everyone who had a hand in this project will be in the description below. Without further ado, let's get into it. Currently in the game, there's an augment for the new Mr. Peaks field upgrade that summons Mr. Peaks to spin the mystery box for you one time for free, called Peaks' Favor. Now, when you usually use this augment at any mystery box location, Mr. Peaks will give you a free spin of that box. However, he's recently been bugged, and if you pair him with a Wonderbar Gobblegum, call it in, the next spin of the box is guaranteed to be a wonder weapon, just like how Wonderbar normally works, except it doesn't actually consume the Gobblegum. So as it stands, you can use one Wonderbar Gobblegum infinitely as long as you yourself physically don't spin the mystery box. On the surface, I was like, okay, cool, a little glitch here for those wanting to get some extra spins out of their wonder bars without having to pay for more of them, but ZoneX took it a step further and said, let's just spin the box 200 times on each map and record what wonder weapons we got, not only to see the odds for each individual wonder weapon without the dilution of having to spin past every regular weapon and score streak in the game, but also to see if Wonderbar as a Gobblegum is even worth spending money on or using. Now, even though you technically only need to consume one Wonderbar per map with the Mr. Peaks glitch, we still had to chew through hundreds of power kegs, arsenal accelerators, and raindrops to make this go by as quickly as we possibly could. On average, it took about an hour and 15 minutes per map, passing through about 30 rounds each to achieve 200 box spins on each of the maps. We also left the map-specific wonder weapons like the Jet Gun, Ice Staff, and Wonder Waff in the boxes when we pulled them to try not to decrease the odds of pulling them if there was a limit on how many players could have them per match. The first map we started out on was Liberty Falls. Just based on my regular playthroughs throughout the year and casual uses of Wonder Bars, I already had a feeling this map was going to be pretty skewed, but nothing could prepare me for what we were about to experience. The first few spins of the mystery box started out strong as we pulled a Jet Gun first spin and a Mark II within the first 4 pulls, but after that, the odds for anything besides the ray gun quickly evaporated. We proceeded to pull ray guns from hits 5 through 29, got a few Mark IIs and a jet gun, but then it went exactly back to how it was, exclusively spitting out ray guns for the mega majority of the rest of the spins. It got to the point where each of us had 5 to 7 ray guns laying down on the ground without any other wonder weapons at each of our individual box locations. Again, as mentioned in the setup, we spent the entirety of the game pretty much strictly pulling gums to refresh our field upgrades, and by the time we had finally reached the 200 box spins, my jaw had hit the floor. Out of the 200 spins of the mystery box using Wonderbar on Liberty Falls, 177 of the wonder weapons pulled were regular ray guns. Once again, 177 of 200 spins were ray guns. Of the remaining 23 spins, 13 of those wonder weapons were jet guns, and the other 10 were ray gun Mark IIs. Putting those raw numbers into percentages and accounting for a little RNG, on Liberty Falls it appears that you have a 90% chance of pulling the ray gun, a 5% chance of pulling the ray gun Mark II, and a 5% chance of pulling the jet gun. I can understand trying to incentivize players to build the jet gun through the free quest, as it's really not that hard or time consuming. But I mean, there are a lot of people, myself included, who burned a lot of money on wonder bars on this map in the hopes that it would just get me to the point of having the jet gun or Mark II immediately, or even setting up a friend with a second jet gun. Now we're going to circle back to these odds specifically on Liberty Falls at the end of the video, but for now, let's move on to Terminus. I'm sure many of you watching are already in the comments seething about how we're all being ripped off by Activision and Gobblegums are a scam, but before you hit send, sit tight because Terminus actually tells a much different story in regards to wonder weapons than Liberty Falls does. Right off the rip, our first few spins produced a beam smasher, followed by a couple of ray guns, and we thought, okay, here we go again, the odds are actually trash. However, as we continued to pull, we were incredibly surprised by what we were witnessing. It seemed as though we were pulling beam smashers just as frequently as we were ray guns, a trend we were definitely expecting to peter off at some point, but somehow never did. By the end of the 200 spins, we were dead even between ray guns and beam smashers, 99 apiece. Obviously bad news for people who were looking for the ray gun Mark II, because we deadass only had 2 of them the entire game. But breaking down Terminus into percentages though, it's basically 50-50 chance you either get the ray gun or the beam smasher with a 1% chance of pulling the Mark II. Now in my own personal opinion, I think the odds of pulling the beam smasher is on par with the ray gun because of how quote unquote hard the actual quest is for it. On Liberty Falls, the jet gun doesn't take much of a setup to get besides grabbing a few parts around the map, whereas the beam smasher, you have to do the math, you have to traverse the islands, etc., which might not be hard for you watching this, but the average player with no augments and minimal game sense would probably really struggle trying to get this. Pair that thinking with the fact that Treyarch has wanted to boost the Easter egg completion odds this year, and I think you can really start to see why the odds are vastly different between the two launch maps. However, I want to remind you guys here that just because the data supports this theory, there's absolutely no way of confirming that this is Treyarch's intention, and it's strictly my own personal theory based on the data that I collected and observed. The one map you definitely want to play if you're trying to get the Mark II, though, is Citadel, as the swords can't be pulled from the mystery box, increasing your odds to pull that Mark II. However, we did choose to skip over Citadel, as there's no map-specific wonder weapon in the rotation of the box, and like I said, guys, it took 7 hours to get through the rest of the maps, but yeah, we chose to skip over Citadel for those reasons. Now, moving on to the tomb, this is another map that I didn't have a good feeling about going in, as I've used wonder bars galore on this map throughout the year, trying to not only skip right to the upgrade process for the ice staff to cut down on my setup time for high rounds, but also trying to speedrun this map. Especially after the Mark II got added in, I felt like both the Ice Staff and Mark II were unicorns, much like how the odds on Liberty Falls were. And while things started out that way initially, we actually found out something about the tomb you definitely wouldn't expect. Through the first 23 rounds, we had spun the box 84 times, only pulling a handful of Ice Staffs and one singular Mark II. But as soon as we reached round 24, the odds of pulling the Ice Staff skyrocketed. The odds went from being about 5%, much like the Liberty Falls jet gun, to a whopping 40% from the remainder of the match. By the time we were done, we had ended up with 144 ray guns, one singular ray gun Mark II, and 55 ice staffs. Percentage-wise, that's 72% ray guns, 27.5% ice staffs, and 0.5% Mark IIs. Again, this is just a theory, but my working theory is that both Liberty Falls and the Tomb are seen as survival maps with wonder weapon quests that are easier than other maps to acquire due to the maps being much smaller and allowing you to spend less time setting up. Also, the jet gun and ice staff are, in my opinion, the best and easiest wonder weapons to use in the game. It seems like on these maps, Treyarch is trying to nudge the player into building them so it doesn't skew the difficulty in the early game, which I totally understand. However, again, in my own personal opinion, the vast majority of people spending their money on wonder bars are attempting to skip the setup process of acquiring the map-specific wonder weapon, and while I don't necessarily think it should be 33%, 33%, 33% even chance on every wonder weapon, having the odds be at 5% is a little bit crazy. Now, moving into Shattered Veil, this map had the most balanced odds of all three wonder weapons available to you. Throughout 200 box spins, the odds were extremely consistent in what they were giving us with very little fluctuation. We ended this map with 87 ray guns, 81 ray gun Mark IIs, and 32 Wonderwaffs. Note that until the last few spins in the mystery box, the ray gun and ray gun Mark II were literally identical in pull rate, with the Wonderwaff being sprinkled in here or there throughout the process. Percentage-wise, when it was all said and done, we broke it down into 43% ray guns, 40% Mark IIs, and 16% Wonderwaffs. Again, accounting for RNG here, it seems like it's more 40-40 on which ray gun you get and 20% on the Wonderwaff. I actually think this is how it should be for most maps, the ray guns having nearly equal chance with the more powerful, map-specific wonder weapon at a lower percentage, but definitely not at the depths at 5%. Onto our last map before we can total up all of the data, we have Reckoning. Now, the thing about Reckoning's mystery box weapon loot pool is that you actually can't acquire the map-specific wonder weapon Gorgafex until it's been built. So there's no way to bypass the build quest when using Wonderbar, which I honestly think is okay for the first week or two at launch to kind of extend the main Easter egg hunt so people can't just skip out on a good chunk of the steps by immediately getting the wonder weapon. But in my personal opinion, I think they should definitely look to potentially add it into the loot pool at some point so that people who might not be aware that you can't get it don't burn multiple wonder bars trying to. Now, for the data collection itself, Reckoning gets back to pretty much how all of the other maps went. Without Gorgafex in rotation, we pulled 174 ray guns and 24 ray gun Mark IIs. Those percentages break down to 87% of the time you'll get the ray gun and 13% of the time you'll pull the Mark II. With the RNG factor, we felt like, give or take, the actual numbers were probably closer to 85% ray gun, 15% ray gun Mark II ratio on Reckoning. Alright, so we've made it through all of the maps, we've spun the mystery box with over 1,000 wonder bars. What were the odds across the boards? In total, we pulled 681 ray guns, 120 ray gun Mark IIs, 13 jet guns, 99 beam smashers, 55 ice staffs, 32 Wonderwaffs, and 0 Gorgafex. Lumping all of the map-specific wonder weapons together, that's 681 ray guns, 120 ray gun Mark IIs, and 199 map-specific wonder weapons. However, what I really want to highlight here is that 81 of our 120 ray gun Mark IIs were pulled on Shattered Veil, and 99 of our 199 map-specific wonder weapons were the Beam Smasher on Terminus, where the odds for those wonder weapons were significantly increased. Interestingly enough, depending upon the map, the Wonderbar seems to have different behavioral patterns. For example, Liberty Falls has a 90% chance of giving you a ray gun, a 5% chance of giving you a ray gun Mark II, and a 5% chance of giving you the jet gun. Terminus appears to have a 49% chance Beam Smasher, 49% chance ray gun, and a 1% chance you get the ray gun Mark II. The Tomb has a 72% chance to give you a ray gun, a 27% chance of spitting out an ice staff, and a 1% chance of the Mark II, but again, the odds for the ice staff didn't increase until we hit round 24. Shattered Veil appeared to have the most balanced odds amongst all three wonder weapons, with the ray gun and the ray gun Mark II each having about a 40% pull rate, give or take, and the Wonder Waff sitting around 15. Reckoning, of course, will not allow you to pull Gorgafex until it's crafted, and we didn't craft it in our game, but we pulled 87% ray guns and 13% Mark IIs. After collecting all of the data and identifying the trends, the Wonderbar and the Wonder Weapon RNG varies map to map. However, they all do have their own patterns that they follow on each map. In my personal opinion, I'd like to see Wonderbar act as it does on Shattered Veil, having each of the ray guns at about 40% even odds while leaving the map-specific, more powerful Wonder Weapon at 20% pull rate in each map, in my opinion, would be ideal. Again, this is my own personal theory based on data collection. The larger, more complex maps appear to give you the map-specific wonder weapons at a higher rate to help aid in the main Easter egg, but the smaller, survival-esque maps appear to favor strictly giving you the ray gun and nudging you to build the map's wonder weapon. Now that we've gotten everything out of the way, what do you, the viewer, think of all the information presented in this video? Do you think Wonderbar and the wonder weapon odds in this game should vary map to map? What suggestions would you give Treyarch based on the data presented in this video? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe again if you haven't done so already. Also, don't forget to go to the description and check out everyone who's involved in this project. Huge shout out to ZoneX for the idea for this video and collabing with me. Have a good rest of your day. Stay safe, stay hydrated. Peace.